In this video, we're going to have a quick look at how to create something like a lens flare. And you could apply this technique in multiple different ways and to multiple different things. But I just want to talk about how you can create a bunch of custom effects within Blender's Compositor to use and reuse even in other projects. So the first thing I tend to start off with when I'm trying to create something like a lens flare is just an ellipse mask. And if I pipe this in, I've got a smaller image here, so I can just focus on this, and it's a little bit quicker than doing it in the final render. You can always refer to how I added in the titles and added a bunch of lens flares and things like that to the titles in the final files. They're a little bit more complex, but it's just the same idea applied a few times over. So first thing I usually do is I start with a very small mask. So I have a nice tiny dot in the middle of my image, and if it's not very visible, hopefully you can see it. Let's see if I can fit here and make it a little bit bigger. So we've got a tiny white dot here in the middle. So I'm going to zoom out back to its original size, move it over into the corner. So that being said, that's all we have. We have this little ellipse mask in the middle. You can make it even smaller if you wanted to. So it's just a matter of, and now we can get started. So the first thing I like to do is actually bring in a blur, and I'm going to set this to fast Gaussian. If you've seen the previous video, you know that I like to work in a relative fashion. Then I'm just going to blur this out ever so slightly. And now we have a little halo around our white dot. Now, what I need to do actually is bring in a color mix. So that way we can actually mix this blur back into the original, and we still have the little highlight in the beginning. So I'm going to set this to add, and that way we see we have the little white dot. I hope it's visible, but I'll zoom in just a second. We have a little white dot and a little blur around it, which is really nice. So what we can do now is bring in this ellipse mask and duplicate this blur again, bring in the mask, and there we go. Really blur this out like crazy and duplicate this add, and it'll become clear. Right now when I add this in, you can see, and now I'm going to fit it a little bit. So you can see we have this little white glow, little white dot in the middle. We have a glow around it, and now we have a stripe running through it. Now the hardest part about creating these kinds of effects is actually trying to get them to look right and trying to make them look sort of very bright and interesting. So generally what I tend to do is add in a gamma node after this and just pull the gamma down a little bit. And it's just a case of looking at it. There we go. We get a nice sort of wide streak. You can change the size of the Y blur a little bit, so it becomes more of a sort of finer streak. It's not as blurred out in the vertical direction. Go back to 25%. There we go. We already have something that looks quite interesting. Now the last thing I'm going to do is again duplicate this blur, put in the ellipse mask again, add in another color mix, set it to add once more, and bring in that final blur. Now the reason I'm doing this is I want a slightly larger blur around this, and again I'm going to duplicate this gamma node, put it in between, and as you can see, if we do some of the aspect correction here, we can correct the aspect of the blur because we have a 16:9 image, and we can make it round again and make it look good. So this is really cool because now we have an extra blur around it, and this is one of the limitations of boosting these colors like crazy. Sometimes you get to see really odd things. Setting this to Gaussian can sometimes solve the issue, but not always. So obviously there's a limit to how much you can boost these colors. I'm going to bring these back down just a touch. There we go. And we have a very basic flare. So I'm going to move these out of the way. As you can see, we have 4 elements. We've got a stripe, we've got a small glow, we've got a tiny dot in the middle, and we've got a larger glow around. Now, you can color this either, either all the elements separately, or I like to throw in a color ramp. And then we can color this to be something a little bit more yellow or more red. And again, the more complexity you add to it and the more nodes you sort of push into it and the more little elements that you have, the more interesting it will look. But for basic lens flare, this looks quite nice. And depending on what the project is you're working on, this will work just fine overlaying it on top of other stuff. So I hope that explains a little bit how I did these. You could even make your own group node with multiple inputs, so you can have sort of a flare node with all your controls in it if you really want to. But I wanted to do this manually so you could see it's all about just duplicating effects and just adding on top and keeping adding on top and boosting colors and things like that. So, okay, that's it for this video.